Thank you all so much for coming. As Will said, my name is Anthony Russell. I look after the partner and alliance business for a new area of Facebook, which is why we're here today to talk to you, called Workplace, Workplace by Facebook. I'm out of our Singapore office, which is our regional hub for Asia. However, we do have an office in KL, which some of our team spend quite a fair bit of time at, but I personally have responsibility across all of Asia for building what is a very exciting new business for us, which I'm going to spend about an hour or so today talking with you about, and then some of the Symprio team are going to go into a fair bit more detail in regards to what we're doing in the market, how they're delivering solutions related to workplace locally. What I wanted to start with though was a quick video to give you a feel for what we're trying to build, what we're trying to achieve within businesses and enterprises around the world. So just very quickly, a couple of minutes on a brief introduction from Facebook.
We don't go to work for ourselves. We do it for the people we love and the people we serve. Because it matters. We give them our best, and every hurdle just pushes us to keep going, even when it feels like we're the only one. But now, there's a place to find our team, where we can learn something new, share what makes us different, be a part of a community, start a conversation with someone who's on the same mission as us. And when we're connected, things happen faster. Work becomes more meaningful. And inspiration turns into reality. Our voices help build something bigger, better, together. Let's get to work.
So that's a very new video which introduces what we're doing at Facebook, and it really is my pleasure for both myself and, as Will said before, Melina Lee, who's sitting at the back of the room, to be here to talk to you today. This is the first event that we have run in KL. We've run some PR with a lot of the press in Malaysia, but this is actually the first time we're running an event, because we are very new, and I'm going to talk through the story and the journey of where we've come from. But we're building off a platform which has been amazingly successful in many of the people in this room's personal lives. Just out of interest, how many people use Facebook itself in their personal lives? Yeah. How many of you use WhatsApp, for example, as well? Same sort of thing. Look, this is an interesting story, and we are very excited about what we're doing. So feel free to ask questions whenever you want. We have a fair amount of time this afternoon, so please be open and we'll keep it flexible. So a little bit of information about how we got here and why we're talking with you today. In 2011, we were a far smaller company than we are today in 2017. We had about 3,000 employees, and Facebook itself had around about 845 million users on the Facebook.com product that we all know. Now, at the time we were growing very rapidly. Today we're about 17,000 staff, and we have, as of very recently, announced that we have over 2 billion users on Facebook.com. We have over 1.2 billion users on WhatsApp, as well as Messenger, around about the same number. So we have grown rapidly, far more rapidly than other companies that I've been involved in. I actually moved to Asia from Australia years ago to start the Amazon Web Services business. So I've seen companies grow very fast. But Facebook runs at a very different speed to even the likes of Amazon. What we found was we weren't communicating well ourselves. So what we did is we took a private version of Facebook and made it available only for our internal employees. And we did that for a couple of really key reasons. What you see up on the slide here are a set of our values and the cultural beliefs that we have as a company. One thing that's really amazed me in my time at Facebook has been the true belief in diversity and our need to be able to protect it. To be able to protect the way that we live, the way that we believe we should work. So for example, you'll see pictures up here such as move fast and break things. One of our first early slogans was run as fast as you can fall over, stand up and move faster. Just keep on moving fast. Another one which I love, kick the shit out of option B. Make sure that you really get the most out of what you're driving for. Nothing at Facebook is someone else's problem. These are things that we really live by, and as the company was growing from 3,000 people to 17,000, we wanted to ensure as we grew around the world, we had the same open, authentic and connected workforce that we did when we were originally in Silicon Valley in the US, when we were originally in Menlo Park. So we wanted to ensure that we had a platform that allowed us to do that. So we, as I said, we created our own private version of Facebook. And that really started the journey of where we are today. One thing that we find today as well is that not just in our business, but I would imagine in the majority of businesses here, one of the icons that's on this screen is something that you use every day for business. Put up your hand if you don't use one of those icons on your mobile phone or on your laptop every day for business. That is unique, but that's good to know. It doesn't happen too often that you aren't using one of these icons. And they're not all owned by Facebook by any means. What it shows, though, is it shows that in our lives, in our professional lives, we want to use technology that we know. We want to use technology that's efficient, as opposed to simply relying on technology that's been around for the last 30 years or so and potentially isn't being used the way that it should. So normally we get 100% of people will keep their hands down on that one, so it's good to have one. The other point that really drives this home is this stat that by the start of 2020, more than 50% of the workforce will be millennials, born after the year 2000. And they want to use the tools and the technologies that they've grown up with that are efficient. You know, I think about communicating with my daughter, for example. I would never send her an email. She would never send me an email. We use one of these applications. It's the way that we communicate. And that really is why we're here today, is different ways to communicate, different ways to be engaged and connected with the people within your company and the people within other companies that you work within. This is the other stat, the other diagram that I think is quite significant in regards to the adoption of technologies over time. In green you can see the radio, in blue you can see television, red digital, and yellow being the extreme growth of mobile-based technologies. And that's something that's very important for us. In about 2007, we took a very significant gamble on moving our entire business to be mobile first, which means everything that we do, everything that we focus on is driven around a mobile experience before any other experience. And this graph really shows it. It shows the significant rise in mobile technologies in every part of our lives today. And that adds to what we're doing with Workplace. Now, in 2015, we started a pilot project that we openly started speaking about, which is a beta program called Facebook at Work, we called it originally. The reason we brought this out is we had a large number of customers of our consumer product, of our advertising solutions, that wanted to know how they could use the same technologies which had helped us retain our culture and had helped us to grow within their organisations. And so we started this beta program where we gave them access to their own private versions of Facebook. Fast forward to 2016, and in October we launched what we then rebranded as Workplace, or Workplace by Facebook, because we really didn't think that Facebook at Work, the words actually worked too well. It was a little bit confusing, because you could be doing Facebook at Work, which was looking at your personal Facebook, or we could be doing Facebook at Work, which was actually doing work, which is what this is all about. Workplace is all about a different way to do work and a different place to do really meaningful work. So in 2016, we launched the solution. We launched it globally. And in Asia, we started working, again, out of our Singapore office with a very, very small team. I think, Melina, there was 3 of you at the start, 4 of them. And now we're about 17 across all of Asia. So we're still very, very small within the wider organisation. Now, there's a couple of other reasons why we're really small. And that is that we strongly, strongly believe that everything that we're going to do and everything you're going to hear about today is going to be driven through our partnerships around the world. We want to keep our teams very small, and we want to work with companies that have local understanding and local recognition of how to deliver the change, which is what I'm going to talk through within that company, within that country, or within that city. So today I am really super happy to be here talking with Symprio in regards to utilising workplace within the Malaysian market. So Symprio are a very key partner for us. We're going to keep our company very small as we work and expand through partners. And that is very key because this is all about partnerships. Now, what is workplace? Well, here's a snapshot of what workplace looks like. What you see is a mobile solution and a desktop solution, and it is exactly what you see when you would be using Facebook in your own personal lives. Apart from the fact that the only information in here, the only access that you have to it is for your corporate use, for your business use. It is isolated. You own the data. We don't own the data. This is a true enterprise solution running on the same hardware solution that runs 2 billion active users on a monthly basis. Now, Workplace is quite a unique product because it really gives you a different way to do work. And so one of the main reasons that we are here as well working with Symprio is this is not simply about using a tool. This is about working differently. And it's actually surprisingly something that our founder and CEO says quite often. He says he thinks it's a different way to run a company. And it really is. Once you see this work, you will fundamentally see the changes that come within running your organisation because it drives towards the core values of what we believe within the wider Facebook. Being open allows you to be more connected. It allows you to be more authentic in the way that you interact with people within your company. It allows you to think of people not as staff but as people. And it really goes to this first point here, which you can see this mock-up of this profile for this person, Carol Taylor. You know, she's a real person. What is her background? As opposed to her being a staff number, it is about being more open and connected and being far more collaborative in the way that you do work. Now, the final point that I wanted to make in regards to the relevance of workplace within the wider Facebook organisation is the slide that you see here, which shows our company roadmap over 10 years. So we run a very different company structure, and this has taken me a long time to get used to. We don't have too many roadmaps. We have a 10-year roadmap. We know where we want to go over 10 years, and we have a 3-month roadmap. And we don't have anything in the middle. We really just work to a 10-year goal of where we know we want to go, and we have generally a 3-month roadmap and 3-month goal. Now, the reason being is we have the responsibility in our consumer lives within Facebook to be changing very quickly to world events. So for that one reason, we can't set a 6-month or a 12-month roadmap. But what's important here is when this slide was shown at our F8 conference in April, is you'll see Workplace's name on here as a key 10-year project. So this is a core component of the wider Facebook organisation as we move forward. And that's something that we've been very successful in doing since we launched this product just under 2 years ago, is being able to get this as a core component within the workplace solution. Now, what that also means is this is what we do every day. This isn't a hobby of ours. This isn't a side product that Facebook creates. This is all we do. We make the world more open and connected. We make it more efficient for you to engage other people in your personal lives. And that's what we're doing with Workplace. This is not a side project. This is everything we do. All of the research that we do, all of the development work that we do is around how can we make human beings more efficient and more effective in the way that they communicate. Now, what is Workplace? What do you get on Workplace and what are the differences between Workplace and Facebook? So what you see here on the left-hand side are a set of the enterprise components of Workplace. So the first thing is it is a completely private subdomain, so it's a separate part of Facebook for your organisation. You're not logging in with your personal credentials in any way, shape or form. They're two totally separate platforms. Your company owns the data. We don't own your data. Where on Facebook.com, your data is a part of the wider Facebook data set. Here, your company owns the data. We're a steward of your data, which is a very significant difference. Also, the fourth point here, which is third point, sorry, is the ability to integrate with your own access control systems. So being able to integrate with your own single sign-on solutions is very key. So if an employee starts within your company, they automatically get provisioned in Workplace. If someone leaves, they automatically get deprovisioned. Their data is always there, and I'll talk about that at a later stage for your company, but the reality is you've got complete security ownership of the way in which people access the solution set. Now, for those in the compliance and regulatory area, we're SOC 2 and also ISO 27001 compliant, which is a very significant regulatory requirements for cloud-based solutions. And we obviously have a significant amount of enterprise support and analytics that allows you to understand what's happening on that platform. Now, what you don't see on Workplace is you don't see any personal posts, because this is not your personal Facebook account in any way, shape or form. You don't see any apps, you don't see any ads, you don't see any pictures of your friend's cat, unless they put it in a social group within your own version of Workplace. Because this is not Facebook consumer solution, this is your own enterprise business access to Workplace. Now, I want to spend a couple of minutes diving a little bit deeper in regards to what the solution is and how we feel the solution allows you to be more open and connected in the way that you do business every day, and how companies around the world use this to do business. This is the place they do business. It's the way they communicate. So starting off, as I mentioned before, the ability to have very rich profiles is the first point for us that's very key. We believe that people should be more authentic. They should be more personable. We should be more personal in the way that we do business. So the ability to have a profile which has a significant amount of rich data about you is very important. It seems very minor, but it breaks down barriers. One of the companies that I'll talk about later on, governments that I'll talk about later on, is the Singapore government, which in themselves are in the process of moving 140,000 people onto Workplace. One of the main reasons for that was they want to break down barriers. They want to break down the siloed departments within the Singaporean government, and they want to make sure that they're being more efficient in the way that they communicate. So just starting here with profiles is very important. But more so than that, being able to have rich posts. You know, you post data within groups. You're able to have very rich communications as opposed to textual communications within an email or bad ones within a wiki. You have very rich communications, and here you can see this chap Tim is actually running a vote. So he's got a poll that he's got up and running, and he's able to take that poll and to have comments that come off that poll. In addition to that, something that's very hard to get in your day-to-day business life, which is what are the trending posts? For all of the groups that I have access to, what are the most important things that people are reading and commenting on? Now you think about that and the fact that you've never really been able to do that in your business lives before. The only way that you potentially could have done that traditionally would have been, as they say, standing around the water cooler or having lunch. How do I know what other people are finding interesting? Well, here, I look in my top right-hand corner and I can see the posts that are most interesting to people in the company, and I can see the reactions. And I'll talk a little bit more about reactions at a later stage. But this gives me the ability to have my finger on the pulse of the organisation in a very, very timely manner. In addition to that, the way that Workplace works is I work within groups. I have a set of teams and projects that are set up as groups. That is where I work. So these are the different topics and the different projects that I'm working on. I have very quick access to these. I don't need to scan through a set of emails. I don't need to go to certain wiki sites to be able to see it. I can see where people are working today. Now, I mentioned groups before. Groups are the essence, are the core of what you do. And it allows you to be able to structure your organisation based off office, based off country, based off department, the finance department, the IT department, the sales department, or potentially the way that we're finding a lot of very engaged customers are using it, being able to set up short-running groups, being able to set up a group for a short period of time for a small project to bring the appropriate people together. So at the moment, I'll give you one great example. At the moment, we're setting up and doing a lot of work with select governments around Asia, and it's the first time we've ever done resell. And I'm bringing together people from the Asian teams, from my team. I'm bringing together legal people. I'm bringing together compliance people, and we set up a group and we talk within that group. We have structured conversations that everyone can read, everyone can comment on. So groups are exceptionally important for us to be able to communicate, but also to be able to provide feedback as well. So you can see down the bottom here that there's reactions to the post. There's a set of replies to the post, and there can be replies to replies. So instead of getting killed by group email death that we've all had, we have the ability to have very, very structured, very, very clear conversations that are able to be interpreted very quickly by your organisation. In addition to that, one of the features that simply we could have sold itself, and I'm going to talk about one of the companies later on, Starbucks, that literally would have bought this on its own, is the ability to go live. The ability, just like Facebook Live, for you to, in real time, start streaming a conversation or a situation. So I don't now need to be able to have millions of dollars worth of TV gear to suddenly have a connection between the CEO or senior management and people within the organisation. I can have a very rich, authentic connection with everyone by the ability to go live. And I'm going to show you some really interesting things from Starbucks a bit later on, but they literally would have bought this for that one reason. New CEO coming into the company, wanting to have connections with all of the organisation and wanting to be able to do it in a far richer environment. In addition to that, I've already mentioned polls before, but the ability to quickly tap the knowledge base within that group to ask questions, to get answers, is something that we see is very key within workplace. Now, one of the features that was one of the first things that we brought to market, which people wanted, was not just communicating within their company, but how do I communicate between two companies that are both using Workplace? So we brought out what we call multi-company groups that allows you, one or many companies, to connect. So all of the work that I do with the Symprio team, all of the work that I do with all of my partners around Asia is done through multi-company groups. Both companies own that data, both companies have access to that data, and there is no transfer of knowledge across other platforms. It sits on the workplace environment. It is highly secure in the way that both companies have access to it, and it allows you to collaborate with all the richness of everything that I've spoken about before. Now, in regards to the richness, just one or two more final points here, is the ability to post very formatted information, highly detailed structure, as opposed to just very specific textual information, allows you to draw far more information out of the conversation. Be it the heading, be it the title, be it the wording, or be it the embedded videos and the imagery or audio that's actually embedded within there. You have the ability to be very, very structured in the way that you have conversations. You know, the amount of external material that we read within our business lives on LinkedIn, on Medium, on other services that are very, very formatted. One of the reasons that we consume that information so readily is because of the formatting that's there. It allows us to be drawn to where the story is going. Now, one other thing that's very important for us is the ability to communicate across borders. So what you see here is that we've brought in from Facebook is the auto translation. So someone's typing in Japanese and directly straight underneath there comes the English translation. The ability in real time to use our natural language processing and the artificial intelligence that we've recently announced and released to create what is some of the most specifically correct translations that you can get. Now again, I work across at the moment about 15 countries, and generally we speak in around about 8 different languages across those 15 countries at times. And this is a very significant feature. Again, it breaks down barriers. It allows us to be far more connected and make sure that we're actually getting the right conversation up and running, and to ensure that people are communicating correctly. So auto translation is a very important feature. The other one is the ability to have direct conversations between multiple people. So what you see here is our group chat, which is very similar to Facebook Messenger. The ability to chat with one person or the ability to chat with multiple people allows for real-time conversations to be taking place. In addition to that, what you'll see is the fact that I can, from there, very quickly, jump from chat into video calling. So how do I do direct video calling within a secure environment? Again, all of that data is owned by my corporation. The ability to talk directly over a laptop screen or on the mobile device, again, very similar to the same solutions that you get within the Facebook environment, but doing it in real time within your workplace environment is very, very key, again, to be able to provide that far richer connections and communications. Now, The summary of all of this is really 4 key points. And I've already mentioned the second one, which is that we are driving a mobile-first solution. But I probably should have started one step before, which is this is familiar. For everyone in this room who has used Facebook, you know how to use Facebook. This is the same technology. You don't need to train people on how to use the tool. You don't need to train people on how to engage people more efficiently because they know how to use it. What you do need, and one of the main reasons that we work with partners around the world, is this is a significant change in the way that your organisation starts working together and collaborating. And so that's why working with the Symprio team, you can understand the organisational change that can happen. Because if you don't do this correctly, people will start posting pictures of their food or will start posting pictures of their cats. And that's not what Workplace is all about. The companies that have been very successful in using Workplace have been successful because they've understood that they're going through a level of organisational change. They've understood that they're now mobile workers, pardon me, that were never connected before, now have the ability to be connected. So for example, if I've got a workforce of which 30% of them, 40% of them have never been able to be connected with senior management, how do I ensure that they now know how to communicate efficiently? We've got some great examples from the aviation industry where the only interface between the cleaners of planes and senior management was the whiteboard, the corkboard, in their breakout room where they had lunch. You know, management would put up notices and they would be read by the cleaners, and that was the only interface that was there. How does the business change when suddenly the person who's cleaning the plane can now communicate in real time with the CEO? So this all comes down to a level of change within the organisation because everyone is connected, everyone has a voice, and everyone can collaborate efficiently. And that really is where things change. So even though this is very familiar, there is always the need to understand how to go through that level of digital transformation that comes with using a platform like this. In addition to that, what we have found, and obviously I would say it, but you'll see from some of the companies that I talk about later on, this does in most cases become the centre of the company. This is the place that you communicate, this is the place that you do work. And also finally, it is separate and secure from everything that you do in your personal lives. And it really has to be drilled home. This is not your own personal version of Facebook, this is a private version for your corporation. So, I'm going to spend a little bit of time looking at some of those companies that are using Facebook, using Workplace today. And the first one that I think I've already mentioned quite a few times before is Starbucks. And Starbucks is in the process of rolling this out globally. It's already rolled out across the US. Because this is a very interesting story. When the new CEO came on board, start of last year I think it was, he wanted to ensure that as he was taking over from the founder who'd been with the company for quite a while, that he wanted to have a direct conversation and communication with the vast amount of their staff. He wanted to ensure that the mobile workforce had as much of a voice as anyone who was sitting in the office in Seattle. And what we found amazing out of this is the next video that we found. We had nothing to do with it all. And out of all of my years of being in technology, I've never seen anything like this. And I'm just going to play it for you now.
In January, we implemented Workplace by Facebook. Now think of Workplace by Facebook as a private Facebook for Starbucks partners to communicate and share information. Workplace allows us now to stream live open forums and have real-time dialogue with our store managers. We launched this in January with a live open forum hosted by Howard and myself with all store managers in the US. That's what you see up here on the screen. This was actual live open forum in January. And you can see by this live video, we are getting real-time comments, hearts, thumbs up, sometimes a thumbs down, mostly thumbs ups, and store managers asking us questions. Now this was a new experience for both Howard and myself. But we have now started doing these Workplace live open forums with our store managers every month. And store managers have now found a way to create community and better connect with us. Some recent examples. About a month ago, a store manager posted on Workplace. They posted a post that said that they are selling more than 20 beverages a day that are not on our official beverage menu. They are beverages that were featured on Instagram. How many people use Instagram to get your beverage? See all kinds of beverages on Instagram. Well, they're selling 20 a day. They're not sure they have the right recipe. Well, within 24-hour period, nearly 40 other store managers also posted and said, I'm selling 15 of these a day. I'm selling 30 of these a day. And then that evening, our category marketing team saw the volume of posts and how much this beverage featured on Instagram was selling in our stores. And they made a decision that night and posted back to store managers by the next morning that they had made the decision to add this to the official beverage recipes, something that could have taken weeks, if not months, to happen before Workplace, happened in one day. That is creating visibility with our store managers that's enabling us to have more velocity in the way we make decisions so we can better serve our store managers and our partners in the stores.
What I find amazing about this is a couple of things. Firstly, you see a real-world example there of the rapid pace of dissemination of information within a company. Someone had an idea, that idea was able to be translated across multiple stores in a very short period of time, and then it was picked up by head office. That in itself is a brilliant story. But I think even more so is the fact that this audience here has nothing to do with Facebook or Workplace. This is the quarterly shareholders meeting for Starbucks. Never in my life have I ever seen a quarterly shareholders meeting or a shareholders meeting talking about enterprise tools or software that the company's using. Never been done. I mean, that is an amazing video for us to be able to find. It was actually provided to us after the event by someone from Starbucks because it shows that Starbucks as a company wants to show their employees and show the world that they are far more open and connected. It wants to show the young staff of their stores that they are using technology which is readily known to those people. They're not using arcane systems to communicate. And it also shows them that they have a voice. So this is a really, really important message. Quite seriously, I was blown away when I saw this because it really does show the proactive nature of companies who are using this as the centre of their company. Now, in addition to Starbucks, a brief snapshot of some of the global names that we have. You got Booking.com, one of the largest online travel agencies. AirAsia, locally in Malaysia, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. Manufacturing companies, retails, telcos, government organisations, financial institutions. So we have a very, very broad mix of organisations that use Workplace. Quick service restaurants, consumer goods, e-commerce companies, very, very broad at a global level. So there aren't too many industries that we haven't seen traction in some way, shape or form in really the last 20 months or so since we launched and the last 12 months since we're actually a in production solution. Within Asia, we've been extremely proud of the brands and the companies that are utilising this as a core component of their business. Looking again, same kind of makeup, everything from travel organisations through to property development companies, through to insurance agencies. Insurance agencies are a really big one here. How do I break down the barriers between the insurance company and insurance brokers? In addition to that, real estate organisations, quick service restaurants, supermarkets, and hospitals. Now, and the final one that I want to touch on here on the wider Asian piece is, as I mentioned before, the Singapore government. You know, one of the areas that we're going to steer well clear of was government in any way, shape or form originally. It's a business that you need to mature into, but the fact is, Singapore really wanted to ensure that they could be world leading. They wanted to show that they could drive connections by breaking down silos within their government. Now, we're seeing this across a lot of other government agencies, government departments, state-owned companies around Asia as well, more so than other areas in the world, which is fantastic to see. In Malaysia, we've got everything from telecommunications companies. I mentioned AirAsia. I think one of the proudest brands that we have is the work that we've done with Tony and the team at AirAsia in ensuring that everyone within the AirAsia family have access to connect with everyone within their organisation. Property development companies, agricultural organisations, and as I mentioned before, some significant telecommunications companies as well. So we've got a level of diversity both in the global market, the wider Asian market, but then also here in Malaysia. And again, this is the first time we are running such an open forum in Malaysia. that is a really, really impressive, and we're very proud and humbled by the companies that have really wanted to show that they wanted to change the way that they do business. Okay? Now, in addition to what Workplace brings, which primarily is how do I get more efficient and connected with other human beings? That's the first step of what we do. How do we break down those barriers to make sure that you can really communicate and collaborate more efficiently? After we have that done, and one of the most interesting topics that I think a lot of people want us to talk about is how do I then interface with other systems? How does the human go from talking with another human being to talking with an enterprise system, to an internal system that I use within my airline, within my supermarket? Or how do those systems talk back to me? And so where we go from here are the integrations that we're doing within Workplace, because even though the core crux of this is how do I communicate more efficiently, it doesn't always have to be how do I communicate more efficiently with a human being. It could be a system that's communicating with me or me with it. So the first area we go to was the point that I mentioned at the start when we looked at enterprise systems. How do we integrate with your security systems? So the support that we've brought for Microsoft Azure, Okta, OneLogin, G Suite, and Ping, amongst others, shows the level of integration we've gone to from an enterprise perspective to ensure that we can integrate with the majority of security and access control systems that are out there. In addition to that, and I was talking before with someone in the audience, we were talking about, well, how do I interface with my asset management, my document store solutions that I use? Because even though I might want to communicate, I also want to share information. I want to share Word documents, PowerPoint documents. I want to share spreadsheets. I want to be able to share information. So what we did very quickly after launch was we brought out a set of file and storage integrations. So the great work that Box and Dropbox have done as the clouds emerged, the work that Microsoft's done with OneDrive, Google Drive, or even Quip as well, that was recently bought by Salesforce. The ability to show that information, share it and organise it is one of the key components to communication, because it's not just the conversation, it's the asset that goes along with that. Now, if you look at just an example of what this looks like, we also allow, when you're sharing documents, the ability to provide previews of the pages. Because in addition to picking up and downloading the document, I actually might want to communicate and comment on every single page. So as we were presenting and getting ready for this event today, we share the PowerPoints earlier. We go through them and people can comment on every single slide. You've got access to previews of all of those. So it allows you to be more efficient in the way that I'm communicating. I don't now need to download the entire PowerPoint slide to go through it. I can sit on my phone as I'm going to the airport today and have a look at every slide and I can comment on those. You know, that is a level of communication that we just haven't had in this way before. It's brilliant to see. Now, I think one of the most interesting areas that we're going to see moving forward, though, is the integration with other systems and looking at how we can use what's known in the market as bots. So how do we bring bots and integration into groups and into my chat? So how do I communicate with the system, either within a group that I've got set up or within a bot? And I'm going to run through a couple of examples here to show you. So for example, the first one is a very, very simple one, which is reminding me that I've got a meeting coming up. You know, it's a very, very basic construct. What's in my diary and what do I need to remind you of? It could be an alarm on my phone, or it could be within my chat application, my automated assistant tells me that I've got a meeting coming up. But that's a very, very basic example. A couple of other ones I'm going to run through in a little bit of time. But it all comes down to our ability to open up the platform so you can integrate, or your partners or your technology teams can do the integration into other systems. So even though we don't provide these out of the box, we provide an extremely well-known open API to allow any development team to integrate with any system that they feel that they would like to. And over time, as this is a very, even though the solution has been around for 12 years, we've only been driving this from an enterprise perspective for a very short period. We will start to open up these ourselves, but a lot of our customers today are building these integrations as they need. And one great example of the integrations is what we do, again, within Facebook, and we give a lot of guidance to the market. This is a Facebook office, if any of you have been to one of our offices, and what you see here is really our automated receptionist, right? I come along, I click whether or not it's a social visit, whether or not it's an interview, whether or not it's a meeting, or whether or not it's a vendor, I think the last one is. I've never used it myself. And I click a button and I enter my details. And what happens is I, as a Facebook employee, gets a message from reception saying, the person's here, this is where they are, and I can say, I'm on my way, I'm 10 minutes late, or who is that person? And then the person behind the counter, the actual receptionist, will do a piece of work if needed. But the reality is they don't need to do the mundane, boring parts of registering someone to see you. Now, we use about 100 different bots that we've built internally for ourselves since 2011. Actually, it's over 100 now. I think it's about 105. And another great one is, I think I did 9 interviews last week. We spend a lot of time interviewing as we're growing Facebook. And so this is another fantastic one, which is providing me the appropriate information when I need it. So I've got an interview coming up. This is actually, I found out yesterday, a real reminder for a chap who became one of our product managers, Luke Walsh in London. This tells the person, you've got an interview coming up, here's the time, here's the room, here's the CV, and here's the job description. So before I go into the interview, I've got all the information I need about the person who is coming to do an interview. I'm respecting the fact that they're coming to do an interview at my company, and I'm giving them all of the attention I need, and I'm doing it in a timely manner because I'm being reminded by a relatively simple bot that tells me what I need to know. Very, very simple. Now, another one which has been done by a partner of ours that I want to show you is a partner from another area of the world called Service Rocket. Now, this is one for sales teams. So for those companies that are using Salesforce, for example, what you see here is a group, and that group is, let's think of it as a regional sales office. And you have people that are in this group who are talking, and someone says they want to see the sales numbers for the year. And so they ask the Salesforce bot for the sales numbers for the year. Why bother going into Salesforce or your CRM tool to pull out a report when I can have an automated system that comes and drops it straight into the group? From there, we can communicate on that point. Now, yes, there's always going to be a need for you to be able to go into your CRM tool at some stage, but for when I want to have a very quick running conversation with someone, why would I bother? Really, why would I bother to do that? And if I wanted to get more granular information, can I see the numbers for 2013 to 2016? Simple as that. It'll bring up a graph. It'll bring up the data for that specific period. So you see here the difference between the effective nature of one or more human beings talking to each other and one or more systems talking to each other. It's a different way of doing work. It's living in the present, not the past, which I think is quite key. Now, what I'm going to do very quickly, because we actually do have a bit of time, is, and I see a lot of people nodding heads, this normally does happen at this point in the presentation. I'm going to show you a couple more examples, if I may, because there are some really interesting ones right now. What about if I wanted to, who uses Zendesk here? Ticketing system, support desk.
This is Chelsea from Azuqua. I'm just going to do a...
We don't need Chelsea's voice though. Chelsea doesn't need to talk to us. So what you see here is an integration with Zendesk, which is a internal support desk services. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn around and I'm going to ask for some... We're going to ask the ZenBot for, I'm out of purple post-it notes, whatever it is, whatever asset you need within the organisation. And then from that, it's going to go into Azuqua, it's going to set up a ticket, and so you've got an open ticket which support then come and turn around and provide you access to. It's a very simple way to raise a ticket. I might have a broken system, I might have a broken photocopier. It's a very, very basic way to communicate with other enterprise systems, but I'm doing it from a conversational engine, which is my group chat. And you can see here we're now in Zendesk, and we're able to see the ticket that's been raised. Very, very basic. Now, for those organisations that are in fast-moving consumer goods, this is an example from a partner of ours called Body, which is for a taxiing company or a limousine service. Now, what they do is they've got a bot that sits on Messenger, sits online, sits on WeChat, and allows consumers to order a taxi. It allows them to select the type of limousine that they want. And once they've selected it, it shows their location. It will then go from the client, which is again on Messenger, so that's a consumer tool, into the manager, which is sitting on WorkChat. Now the manager will then get a note saying, hey, someone's ordered a limousine. Do you want to see it? Do you want to view it? Can you accept the order? Once the manager logs in, accepts the order, it will then push through in an intelligent manner using their scheduling and rostering services out the back, straight through to the driver, and the driver has the order, and the driver knows how to go. Now, this is for a company that didn't want to build a mobile application. Everyone's already got Messenger installed on their solution. I don't need to do all of the technical heavy lifting of building a mobile app. I'm just building the application logic. And it's going from a consumer platform that we all use into their enterprise workplace environment. And at this point, all of the information is retained and integrating with any other enterprise system that they need. Now, I'm going to show you another one that's become very relevant in the US recently. This is from the same company, Service Rocket. It's called Safety Officer. This has been used recently in the cyclone and floods in Texas. And what it is a safety officer. So it allows a company which has their employees to raise a business continuity alert and ensure that everyone's okay. So the example here is there's an earthquake in Santiago, which is where Service Rocket's development labs are, as well as actually, pardon me, they've got development labs in KL as well. And then from there, once the alert goes out, it goes out to everyone within that office to ensure that they check in. A very simple way to, again, not need to build an application to do alerting to make sure that your staff are okay. The user checks in, sends their location, and the company has a status request on everyone within the organisation. So I've worked personally in companies in this space before, and this type of solution can cost you millions of dollars. You know, there's a lot of financial institutions around Asia. There's a lot of airlines. There's a lot of governments that spend millions of dollars a year just on this. You know, the ability to effectively communicate with all of your staff and to make sure that they're well. You know, be it a natural disaster, be it a man-made disaster, or something far worse, the reality is I want to make sure I can check in and be compliant with any regulation about knowing where my staff are at any point in the day. So that's Safety Officer. There's one more that I want to show before we finish up, which is from one of our partners in India. And I know that Will and the team are going to go through a lot more on bots at a later stage, but I just wanted to show you this really basic one that they've built, which is the mood meter. Now, the mood meter is just being able to tap into the current mood within your company. How are people feeling? Are you tired? Are you stressed? In this day and age, we really don't want to lose employees. We want to ensure that we treat them as people. We want to understand if they're having a bad day. We want to understand whether or not they're stressed. So the ability to do this, and I see a lot of people smiling, it's very interesting. This is very important. I mean, you spend a lot of money hiring people, you want to keep good staff. How do I ensure that I have my finger on the pulse? How do I ensure that I understand whether or not people are happy in what they're doing? So again, very, very simple example, but you don't need to build the application. The application is WorkChat. It sits on your mobile phone. You build a bot or you use a partner to build a bot, and that bot allows you to run a greater level of integration and understanding based off whatever workflow you wanted to run. So they're just a couple of examples of the bots that we've seen to date. There are a lot more, but they're really the main ones I want to run into now. So as I finish up this first section, we're going to take questions later on. I wanted just to talk to you about what are the next steps. There's many ways to look at companies that are interested in workplace on how they move forward. A lot of companies will simply pick it up and utilise it themselves, and that's all well and good. If you really want to get the most out of workplace, if you really want to get the most, you need to look at this as an organisational change project. You need to look at this as, I'm going to be far more open in the way that I communicate. How do I set this up correctly? Now, what we've found is this is a very, very general view of an implementation template. Okay, this is what we use when we do a small amount of implementation, but this is generally what we've learnt from our partners as well. There's a set of technical components to a deployment. There's a significant set of group analysis and champion training, and there's a set, and the most critical piece is, how do I communicate this with my team? So if you look at a company, 2,000-3,000 people, you know, you might be looking at a couple of weeks on-off of actually doing delivery to get Workplace up and running. But really the most important thing here, and this is something that I really can't stress, is the most productive long-term customers of ours utilise a partner to be able to help run that. Because understanding how the business works today, understanding the group structure, understanding the types of groups that should be set up, who should be champions within the organisation, is extremely key. And that's really what comes from utilising a company that knows the market and knows the types of companies that are working in this space and can provide that service. So, as I finish up, I don't always show this slide, but I've been asked it a lot in the last little while, so I've put this back in. What are the prices that we have available for Workplace? The most important thing for us is showing that people are engaged. Yeah. So the first thing to remember is, in every single one of these, you see a statement that says active user. So we charge for the amount of people who are using the service in the month. We strongly believe that you shouldn't be being charged for this if you aren't using it. We hate shelfware. We don't want this to be something which is you're delivering out, and if it's not being used, why would you pay for it? So you pay $3 per user per month for the first 1,000 users or below, so $3 per user per month. Up to 1,000, and then for the next 9,000, so up to 10,000, you pay $2 for those next 9,000, and anything above is $1. And these are US dollars for the prices. All of our pricing and charging at this point in time is still in USD. But again, the main point here is you only pay for people who are engaged, who are using the platform. So the charging does vary, right? We don't want to charge you if you're finding that areas of your company haven't come on board yet. You shouldn't be charged for that. So we want to ensure that only the people who are utilising the solution are being charged to be using the solution. And if you think of what you're getting there, you're getting everything from Workplace, the standard environment to be engaged, all the way through work chat, video conferencing, video calling, group chat, and in a platform that you know scales, you know is secure. We've been running this for many, many years. We've been running it around the world with over 2 billion users. This is one of the most secure platforms for communication. And it's the same stack that's being used in the consumer world is now available for us to be utilising within business and enterprise. So that is about all I had for us today. I think I've been speaking for about an hour now already. I don't know, Will, whether or not you want me to take questions now, or we take questions at the end. Okay, we've got a mic that can go around if anyone does have any questions. I will be around later on as well to talk further, but just let me ask, are there any questions at the moment? One at the back?
First of all, I think this is a great tools and great collaborations too, because everyone is familiar with Facebook. But I have one question. So this is a tool that we extended out from Facebook, but as you know, the China market is actually blocking the Facebook to be used in dot. Yep. So I just wanted to know, does it mean that for those company, if we do have the subsidiaries in the China itself, we can't use this Workplace and can't collaborate with the China users? That is a very good question. That's a good hard one to get at the start. Yes, that is very true. One of the few challenges that we do have is organisations that have Chinese-based departments or organisations. We are underneath the facebook.com domain, which means that we are blocked in China. We do have a large number of companies, multinationals with groups in China, and there are many different ways to
for those organisations to have this as part of their core infrastructure through their own networking solutions. But generally, yes, this is an issue for organisations in China. It can be a problem.
So another question could be a little bit extreme. What will be those countries like originally we able to use the Facebook, but eventually Facebook being get blocked? Will be impact on the usage of the workplace as well, right?
I mean that's a hard one to answer, right? That depends on. You could say that about any solution, any cloud-based solution that's out there, and a state government that might close access to that service. At the moment, China is definitely one, but it does come down to, I can't look into the future to say which countries might at a later stage discontinue access. It really does depend, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? One at the back.
Hi, I think I like the idea where you can collaborate with your external partner that you mentioned just now, right? You need to have a Facebook workplace account of 2 different companies, and then you can start collaborating.
Yes.
What about partners that without workplace, right? If they do not have such an account,
yep.
How are we able to bring them into our working group?
Yeah, good question. So we've been working on that for the last year. What we have brought out is a free service offering that allows companies that are simply wanting to connect with another organisation within certain groups and aren't heavily using it themselves to utilise workplace for that conversation or for that very small company for free. It definitely isn't enterprise grade. It's not business grade. It doesn't give you a lot of the enterprise features and solutions, but it does allow you to communicate without paying a fee to utilise the solution. So there are ways. We are continually looking at how we can make it more efficient. We don't in any way, shape or form assume that every company in the world is going to use Workplace. So we are working towards how we can make it more open for those organisations that actually aren't paying for it, that don't want to pay for it.
Just recently there was an announcement on the groups, the cross-company groups where it's not, the partner that you're working with does not need to be on Workplace. So in cases like insurance agents, for example, if you want to communicate with your insurance agents, it is possible to basically set up a cross-company group and have those agents connect, even though they are not using Workplace themselves. This was just recently announced a few weeks ago.
There's a lot of work that is going on there. They didn't need to have Workplace before, but they then do get access to Workplace, yes, in that scenario. Because I think your overarching point is not everyone will be on Workplace. That is true. So you still want to ensure that other people can connect in. That's for sure. Yeah.
Just curious, in terms of the ID that we are using in the workplace, right? Like for instance, now we have a personal Facebook. So everyone, you have your unique ID on that. So when we have this external workplace on that, so I just want to know that, does it mean that we need to create a separate ID on that, or we still will be taking the single unique, that what we have currently, but we have 2 different places. One is a personal Facebook that we always use, and the other one is a workplace on that.
Yep. No, let me start again. You have 2 unique IDs.
We still need to create new IDs.
Absolutely. This is totally disconnected from your personal account. And better still, the majority of businesses and enterprises that have some level of authentication and access, be it Active Directory up, will actually integrate this into their back-end systems to ensure that they have full control over those IDs themselves.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. Another couple of questions.
I'd like to ask, say, as as you go along using workplace, at times you have to delete many of the conversation, and how can one back up the conversation?
Yep. Very good question. One point that I failed to mention before is, first, before I answer that question, I'll make another statement, which is I think one of the most valuable things of workplace is the fact that it is a retained and growing knowledge base. So 10 years down the track, you might have had 30% of your company leave, but I can still go back and search across all of the information that's publicly available to me, or in a group that I'm in, I can go back and look through that information. That's not something that generally you have today when you look back through email. Someone leaves your company, their email directory is archived, and generally no one will go back into it again. So one of the values of workplace is that it is a retained knowledge repository. I have access to every single conversation that's been had, that again, I have access to those groups. So recently I had some associates from partners from India that were wanting to go into the US, and I needed to find out how I could invite them into the US. I did a search internally. Within about 5 seconds, I found the post to the link that then gave me the ability to create a letter to get them into the US. So the retained knowledge is very, very important. But your question, which is, how do I ensure that data that is deleted is actually retained? Because you can delete data at this point in time on Workplace. And what a lot of our government and our insurance and banking companies primarily do is, again, due to the fact that we have an open API, we have compliance and governance companies that will pull all of the data out and will actually encrypt it and archive it, so there's always a copy of that. So a lot of the systems that are used within the FSI industries, financial services and insurance groups, actually now have connectors into Workplace, so they can pull the data out and ensure that there is a what do we call it? Write once, read many times. There is always a copy of that data set. Does that make sense? So the retained archive data is utilised by a third-party enterprise tool, which is generally already set up within a lot of companies that need to ensure that they retain every piece of information. So the access to that data will be through those systems, if data has been deleted. But generally, data is not deleted. You do have the ability to delete data off Workplace. So in those cases, third-party systems suck all the data out and store it locally. And so it's used for e-discovery and compliance requirements at a later stage through their tools. You don't look convinced.
It wouldn't be within Workplace that it would be stored. It would be third party.
Yes. So if the data has been deleted from Workplace, because we still allow data to be deleted, if it has been deleted, unless you're using a third-party compliance tool to back up all of the data in real time, no, you can't. Yes. But to my earlier point, one of the most important parts of Workplace is the fact that I have complete access to any data that has been written into Workplace and not deleted from the time that Workplace was set up, and that I have access to that data. Okay.
I have similar question to one of the person that highlighted about China.
Yes.
This is about Indonesia. What happened was a couple of years ago, we launched an online program. I won't say program, it's a HR portal.
Yep.
So we had a number of challenges when we wanted to launch it in Indonesia. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, we couldn't do it because they have some regulation on information protection and data privacy. Yep. So if we want to collaborate with our colleagues in Indonesia, because after Malaysia, for Maybank, Indonesian market is the biggest market.
Yep.
And we have a huge number of employees working for Maybank Indonesia. So if we want to collaborate through Workplace, yep, what should we do and what are the challenges that we foresee if we want to introduce Workplace in Indonesia?
So that's a good question. Indonesia has taken, if I look at a general statement here around cloud services, okay, as I mentioned before, I've been in this space since about 2010 when we started the Amazon Web Services business. And one of the few markets in Asia that has really gone the opposite direction has been Indonesia in regards to their data sovereignty requirements. And you see today a large number of financial institutions spending hundreds of millions of dollars bringing a large amount of infrastructure and data centres back into Indonesia. That really has gone against the trend, and there's nothing, I've got no problem with that, but that has gone against the trend of a large number of countries around the world that have gone the other way to be openly embracing cloud-based services. So just a general statement, you do have with Indonesia, up until last year, you did have 4 or 5 years of Indonesia going towards more of data sovereignty requirement, data on premise. Now, data in country. That has started to slightly change, so you do see a lessening of those restrictions. So we are starting to see a lot more interested organisations from Indonesia to be utilising our solution. And we don't hide the fact that Facebook is a global service. Right? We have data centres in the United States and we have data centres in Europe. And we also synchronise data as well through Singapore as well. But we do not have data and we do not have local data centres in every country around the world. And that's the same with Microsoft, that's the same with Amazon, with Google and the likes and others. So in those countries or those industries where there is data sovereignty compliance requirements, potentially workplace isn't the right answer for those organisations. And it's surprising when you talk about Maybank. When we originally set up Workplace, we generally agreed we were going to, I mentioned before public sector, we also generally said that we were going to stay away from banking as well and financial services. But one of our first major accounts was the Royal Bank of Scotland. Okay, RBS went in significantly in this because they wanted to break down the communication barriers that they had. We have found, and there aren't too many banks that I can name, as banks generally don't want to be named in these environments, we do have a very large number of banks that utilise our solution that runs across our global cloud infrastructure, which is based out of the US and Europe. So in certain circumstances, this may be a challenge, and you've brought up some really good examples. China is absolutely one unique case in that, at a global requirement of blocking Facebook. And in certain organisations and industries where there are data sovereignty requirements, there's not too much we can do there because it is a global cloud service that we provide.
The other question that I have is the single sign-on.
Yes.
Let's say currently the company or organization they don't have or practice single sign-on.
They should.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not many organizations do that. I won't say. In Maybank, we don't have a single sign-on platform because we run 2 different portals. Yeah, there is one meant for colleagues in branches.
Yes.
And the other one is meant for colleagues in overseas countries.
Okay, right, yes.
Yeah, we have 2 different. So we have a lot of work in internal communication.
Yep.
Yeah. So how do we utilize the workplace? Yep. Because you mentioned about single sign-on. We don't have that at the moment. Yep. And how can we utilize the workplace?
Yep. Good question. So the first one, there's 2 parts of that question. The first one about single sign-on is there is also a Microsoft Active Directory connector as well for being able to synchronize your user data into Workplace. There are many ways around the single sign-on challenge. The best one that we recommend for large organisations is to potentially utilise an external third-party single sign-on solution like Okta or OneLogin, and there are ways to do that at an exceptionally cheap price. A lot of companies, though, still will manually manage Workplace. It's something that for large banks, we definitely don't recommend in any way, shape or form. We would prefer people to probably utilise an on-premise single sign-on solution or utilise our Active Directory for provisioning information in the first step into Workplace. And there are several other ways that we can talk about. We do have this challenge with organisations that are similar to yours, let's say, and there are several ways around that, that's for sure. The second part of your question was 2 different domains, and the way that you neatly put it there means that potentially there might be privacy and security characteristics that are different across the 2. So what you can do, and some of our very large accounts, instead of setting up a single instance of Workplace, they'll set up multiple instances of Workplace. So, pardon me, we have financial institutions, banks in Asia that have walls that need to be up between the retail banks and their commercial parts of their banks. And for that one reason, they'll set up multiple instances and they'll use multi-company groups to communicate between the two. Okay, so you can regulate your engagement between the two, i.e. with the multiple domains that you spoke about before, and have multiple instances. Or there are other ways that you can actually bring both of those domains into that same instance as well. Okay, it depends on what your security requirements are. And the Symprio team, ourselves, we can easily talk you through that. And in certain circumstances under NDA, we can talk about a lot of other banks in very close proximity to here that are either utilising today or in the process of utilising Workplace in the near-term future, because there are quite a few. Again, it is very surprising because this is a very, very regulated area. I've been amazed at the amount of financial institutions that have rapidly moved in the last 12 months onto the platform, but they do have challenges. Yeah, moving, absolutely, absolutely. Good questions. I did this in Japan 2 weeks ago, and I had about 3 hours worth of questions, if you can believe it. So we don't have that long today.
Just wondering, so if an employee has an account on Workplace and
Yes.
then he writes some guidelines on some stuff for the employee, say minutes of meeting on some groups and all, and
Yes.
then he leaves the company later on.
Yes.
So what happens to the profile and the guidelines and the meeting minutes that he wrote on Workplace?
So you first said Facebook, I think. So let's just make sure we were talking about Workplace. He's got a profile on Workplace. Yes. So the information is retained. So the minutes, I do it every day. I do it every day when I speak with Will. I create minutes. If I leave the company, anyone who has access to that group has access to those minutes. That is, I think, one of the most powerful parts of the platform is the knowledge is retained. People can join companies, they can join projects, and they can read from the bottom up. You know, even though this sounds very basic, we really haven't been able to do this too efficiently before. Think about doing that with group emails. How do I work out which emails needed to be read? It's a very different way, even though it's a very simplistic way of actually rapidly learning as you come onto the company or into the project. Now I'm going to stay around later on as well, so we can have some more questions, but I think I should get off stage and let Will jump on.
I think we'll have a break here.
We're going to have a break?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you all so much for the really engrossing questions as well. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.